Almost every moment of every day, we are being bombarded with information. Much of that information seeks to change us. Whether it is well-meaning relatives, opinionated friends, aggressive advertisers, religious dogmas, or political propaganda, most of us have been forced to build up strong resistance to all of this pressure. The truth may be out there, but what are the chances of actually finding it with all the clutter that comes up the moment you try to tune in? And here I am, just one more voice in all the babble. Why should you listen to me? Please give me just a few seconds to present my case. I have no product to sell, no personality to promote, no church to join. This alone suggests that what I have to say may be more than the usual religious static. In this particular video, I will not engage in the hundreds of theological nets that we can so easily be tricked into defending. I am here for one reason alone, and that is to defend and promote the teachings of Jesus, the Christ, the only begotten Son of God. It is my experience, whenever I mention Jesus, that all professing Christians immediately assume that they're doing the same thing, that is, promoting Jesus. Ah, yes, they say. God bless you. Save your sermon for someone else because I've already heard it. After all, I'm a Christian too. Like me, they can see flaws in just about everyone else, but not in themselves. They personally are convinced that God is on their side, that they are an exception, if not the exception. Obviously, it's possible that you are the exception. But let us reserve judgment on that for a minute or two. I'm here to tell you that the whole world, and that almost certainly includes you as well, has either never met Jesus or has met him and rejected him. And I will give you evidence of the authenticity of this claim. You won't like it, but you will not be able to refute it. Jesus compared himself and his teachings to a cornerstone or a solid rock being used as a foundation for a building. He predicted that all of the religious builders would reject the cornerstone or replace the solid rock with the shifting sands of tradition. Like the Pharisees who had Jesus executed, all of those religious activists would talk about prayer, praise, helping the poor, fasting, sexual morality, Bible prophecy, miracles, casting out demons, just about anything you can identify with modern-day Christianity. But, referring to all of these people, Jesus promised that when he comes to judge the world, he will be ashamed of them. He will confess that he never knew them, and he will cast them into outer darkness, where there will be weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth. Please notice that I'm not talking about some bizarre cult leaders or loose cannons with incredibly false doctrines. I'm talking about the most respectable and conservative religious leaders of the day. Men who had been placed in their positions in accord with the laws of the Old Testament. Jesus said that they will be cast out of heaven for but one reason, and that is that they did not receive God's ultimate revelation to the human race, his message of salvation as delivered by his only Son. The religious world today, like the religious world in Bible times, will not be condemned so much for what it teaches as it will be condemned for what it does not teach. What you too very likely are not teaching, and that is the teachings of Jesus. I have traveled the world for more than 40 years, listening to people of almost every persuasion tell me about their various plans of salvation. I have tried to listen sympathetically and to acknowledge whatever truth I could find in what each of them had to say. You can be almost certain that I have heard your plan somewhere along the way, or one very much like it. Yet I have not found a single one which seriously takes into account the teachings of Jesus. Do you understand the enormity of what I'm saying here? Not one of them starts or finishes with obedience to Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. Every single one steers me away from the teachings of Jesus and into the teachings of some human replacement. Everywhere I look, there are empty wells and clouds without water, just as the Bible described it. Oh, there are many, many wells and an abundance of clouds, each professing loudly to have that much-needed water. But they are all dry, all empty, all counterfeits. Jesus said it would be like this in the days before he returns. He compared them to the days of Noah and the days of Lot. Think about it. In the whole world, God found only one family that was faithful in the days of Noah. And then he called on Noah to stay faithfully working for literally decades on a boat far away from water, with not a drop of rain in sight. It was a huge ask, but Noah obeyed. His whole life was gambled on one strange message that he thought he had received from God. There were no healings, no feeding of the multitudes, no resurrections from the dead, just a strong conviction that God wanted him to build a boat. We have so much more to go on today. We have written records of much that Jesus did and said. All of human history, even in this godless and decadent age, is measured from the time when Jesus was born. But what have we done with his teachings? No, don't tell me about your so-called Christian faith if it does not line up with what Jesus taught. In the days of Lot, Abraham was convinced there must be hundreds of faithful believers in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Why do you suppose he thought that? Surely it was because the cities were full of people who were respectable. They must have been at least superficially religious. We hear much today about the abominable sinners that were in Sodom and Gomorrah. But Jesus said nothing about religious or sexual abominations in Sodom and Gomorrah. Instead, he spoke about the great masses of those two cities, the ones who married and raised families, the ones who planted crops and built houses, the ones who flooded the shopping malls every day of the week, buying and selling. They were all destroyed with fire and brimstone from heaven, because they were all counterfeits. For all their religious talk, they did not really care about what God was saying. We are living in those times today. Everywhere we look, there are religious counterfeits. Some of them start out sounding so pious, so convincing, so spiritual and emotional. But in the end, they leave us high and dry, without real answers to the needs of our souls. It is precisely because the genuine article has not yet been offered that there is such a proliferation of religious denominations in the world today. Every new guru knows more than anything else that no other organization has yet hit on the answer. They're all bluffing. They're all majoring on the minors. The world is still stumbling along in the dark, both inside and outside of the religious institutions. So each new kid on the block comes up with some new yet relatively trivial point of doctrine with which to assure the world that they can find what they failed to find in all the other formulas just by turning to the new one. I don't have a new formula. All I have is the old one. The one that you and all the others have pushed aside for so long. The one that has been left out of every church and every plan of salvation. The missing cornerstone. Friends, the Creator of the universe sent His only begotten Son, Jesus, to this planet to give us the answers. I'm pretty sure you've heard that much, or something pretty close to it before, but it always stops there. Everything that has been offered as an answer to your problems has been little more than a fresh coat of paint over the same untreated rust that eats away at your soul and at the souls of everyone else on the planet. Until we, you, they, can recognize this, we are never going to look for, much less find, the real thing. In this series of tapes, I'm going to look at the answers that Jesus has given us. And you are going to see how they resoundingly expose all of the other plans of salvation as worse than counterfeits. Many, if not most of them, are outright contradictions, teaching exactly the opposite of what Jesus taught. All I ask you to do is to hear what I have to say, constantly asking yourself this question: is he saying something that supports what Jesus taught? Or is he saying something that contradicts what Jesus taught? And while you're at it, every time that you find yourself reacting to what I say, ask yourself, as honestly as you possibly can, am I reacting because of my loyalty to what Jesus taught? Or am I reacting because I have a problem with what Jesus taught? You may be surprised by your own answers. Thanks for listening. If you appreciated the message here, then please subscribe to this channel and set it up to receive notifications when new videos are released.